I think there are mics around, and the same rules apply. Please say your name and your company. Yeah, in the middle there. Thanks, Ciara.
Hi, Paul O'Connor. Excuse me. This is Seaweed. My question, because I was in Europe or Germany recently, and there's a rise of veganism, and I wondered, Colin, are you worried about that, or are the other people on the panel, are they worried about that?
I think the whole free-from area is an area of dynamic growth. You can see it in dairy alternatives as well as in non-dairy products. I'm worried about it. I'm very conscious of it, and we're looking at it intently. But we believe there's a huge amount of growth still within the core business here in Ireland. We've a long way to go before we'd be very put out by it. But I'm conscious of it.
Would any of the other speakers or any of the other guests here like to comment on that?
I think we'd probably be the same. There's like a lot of the chocolate, there's a lot of alternatives to chocolate in the market still, so a lot of growth, that it wouldn't be something that's on our radar.
Cassandra, you're gluten-free anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, that's quite loud. Yeah, I think we'd be really silly to ignore it. It's growing at such an alarming rate. Not alarming actually, because I think there's a lot of positive intention. I think there's something we should pay attention to. I think we're very conscious of it. So our sweet coconut and vanilla has a little bit of dairy in it that we're looking to take out. I think if we're going to do a cheese flavour, part of done properly is that it should be proper cheese. So I don't know. We're slightly torn. It's something that I don't have a definitive answer to, but it's something that we're very aware of, and we're trying to kind of figure out where we want to sit as a brand in terms of veganism.
John, doesn't affect you, does it?
I guess similar to some of the other speakers, we would be aware of it, but we wouldn't see it as one of the major trends affecting our domestic business. We probably are seeing it more on the international stage at the moment than in the domestic area within our category.
Thanks. Any more? Yeah, there's one here, Ciara. Yeah.
Hi, Jenny Mead from Mead Potato Company. I have a question for Flavins. How do you balance getting sufficient yield kind of from your core business versus investing in the future? And is there some kind of do you have a guidelines or parameters for that?
Well, I guess I'd start by saying that's quite an important question. And actually, I'd say as well that it's a little bit different for us because we're a family business. So that means we can take a slightly different horizon in terms of growth and payback maybe than from a multinational company. It's important, I guess the first thing I'd say is one balance to get right. I think that you need to have a good core business if your market is in your domestic market, but you need a good core business that's actually generating a decent margin and throwing off good profit, and then that maybe allows you the right to go and look at building your businesses elsewhere. So for us, our domestic market, it was very important that our domestic market was profitable before we decided we would go into export markets like the US and the UK. So we had to get that platform right first of all, because if we went into export markets and actually we were under siege in our domestic market, then we're not prepared to take that 2 or 3 year time frame before you start generating revenues from those markets. So that's probably the first kind of balance that we have to get right. Another one really is just something that Colin mentioned earlier around the area of structure and resource. I think if you're going into new markets, and I'm talking in the context of export, you really do have to put the right structure in place and commit the right resource to it. Otherwise, I think it's more of a wish than a real business intention. And something then I suppose that a lot of companies find as well is around the revenue stream that comes from sowing these different type of opportunities. And so you have to be prepared to manage that. Some of those are going to be a bit more distant when they start generating profit. and then others maybe sooner and earlier than that. So you have to take that into account in your thinking as well, so that you don't have too many longer plays, opportunities that actually will become profitable in the future, but there are too many of them there that are loss-making in the near horizon. So you have to get those kind of checks and balances right.
Colin's going to answer that question again or contribute.
Well, yeah, very similar to what John's saying. There's a great expression I heard quite some time ago from someone who I thought was very wise in terms of talking about icebergs. And your system can't just jump from an existing core business to a small iceberg. If you're on a big iceberg, you'll fall over. It won't allow you to wave. Just if you just visually think of it, you'll just fall over into the sea or fall over into the water. So you need to allow the newer one to get to a size before you can move all your resources. You need to properly resource up it at the same time as allowing it to become big. You can't. People quite often become very mithered and very fixated by what's new rather than actually what's current, and being really fixed on, okay, how can I make the best what I have, if it throws off more resources, to allow me to build. Otherwise, what I've effectively done is I've actually just displaced my weight and I'll fall into the sea.
Good way of putting it. Any more questions? Yeah, at the near the back.
Hi, Elaine Lavery, Improper Butter, a range of naturally seasoned butters. Not all butter is the same. My question is for Cassandra. Thank you both for your presentations. I'm just wondering, it was brilliant to hear how you've come through the past 5 years, and I was wondering what's ahead in the next 5 years. So is that new products, new markets, or perhaps strategic partnerships? Just be interested. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think, we've got quite a clear sort of 2020 vision in terms of, the sense of the ambition. In terms of the granularity, it's quite difficult to sort of break it down. At that level, I would say it's a combination of, international growth, so really proving that we can work in Europe, and then, we have got our eyes set further afield, the US, Asia, not sure exactly where would be next. We need to do the proper research. In terms of the actual brand, I think we've got a lot of new products lined up. They will sit within popcorn, but I guess different permeations of that, new flavors, and then also format as well is really important to us. So I think if you're going to position yourself as a lifestyle brand, you have to perfectly play into your customer's lifestyle. So really understanding the touch points at which our customer would like to, eat proper corn, and then developing formats that really, speak for that moment. How do you make a sharing bag more shareable? How do you make something that's supposed to be impulsive be able to eat it with one hand because you're on your iPhone, as was brilliantly illustrated at the beginning. So, format, new product, international, and then, in terms of the brand, there'll be, I'm sure, more partnerships, more collaborations. We'll develop platform. I think part of done properly is also about your sustainability footprint and giving back. So really understanding what that means for us. Is it about setting up our own foundation? I don't have the actual answers, but that's kind of the thinking. That's where sort of our heads are at the moment.
Thanks, Cassandra. I think there was another question just behind. Yeah.
Hi, Rachel Nolan from Nobo. Thanks, guys, for a great presentation. Another question for Cassandra. Congratulations on great success. We're always inspired by you guys. And you kind of touched on scaling and how you have managed to maintain a kind of bespoke and personal touches as you scaled. But on the manufacturing side, has that been a challenge in scaling from the original manufacturer that kind of gave you that break, or has that been a challenge as you've grown your business? And then just another question also on your team. When you were growing, obviously, you started out yourself. What were the key first hires you made as you grew your team?
Sure. So in terms of the back end of the business, I think something that while we are very creative and Some people's interpretation of that is fluff. The back end of the business is incredibly robust and very comprehensive, and so the initial relationship with our manufacturer, we're still working with the same manufacturer today, where we account for the considerable majority of his business, but off the back of that, he's just committed to an £8 million investment program. We're only using sort of a quarter of the potential there. So it's very much been kind of, you have to have that sort of long sight and make sure that your business can kind of grow and scale and fulfill very quickly. And we've always been very aware of that. So I feel quite comfortable on that side of things. In terms of the team, I launched the business with a very good friend of mine, Ryan, who's my business partner. Fortuitous timing. He was in property at the time, and it was kind of when the property market wasn't doing so well. And so we partnered together and launched the business together. And then the next hiring was a guy called Alex, who's still with us today. And when you're a small business, everyone kind of does everything. So we were all doing ops, sales, marketing, and maybe slightly specializing a little bit. It's only when you get to sort of plus 5 or 6 people that you start to then really kind of own a department or an area of the business. I think I probably underestimated the importance of the operational side, not insofar as the business suffered in any way, but I didn't realize how involved it was in terms of forecasting, making sure you're lean, really that sort of, the engine, making sure it's as kind of well-oiled as possible. So that, I think, having a great person in operations as well is something that I've definitely learnt.
Thanks, Cassandra. Any more? Yep, no, there's more questions up here. Yeah, down. Oh, sorry, there's one at the back first, and then we'll take the two here. Yep.
Sorry, Colin. Charles Smith, Certified Irish Angus Beef. Just one of the things I thought in your presentation, do you think it's possible to be successful in promoting a brand while you do own brand? And if so, how do you counteract when you develop a product like super milk to save that from being cannibalized by the own brand business?
First of all, I think your company is a brand, and that shouldn't be taken lightly at all. I think it is possible to develop private label as a business venture while you're developing your own brands. There have to be points of difference, though, significant points of difference. And you have to work out why you're doing one. In my view, why you're doing one and the other. So is one to get you scale, to get you operational efficiency, to get you access to a customer, to get you a revenue stream because you might want cash flow benefits, and is the other for the premium and for the margin. So you need to be clear in your mind, and sorry, they're only examples, you need to be clear in your mind as to what the role of each part of your business is, and at what's the best time for that role to either be dialed up or dialed down, rather than just an awful lot of people, I think, end up in private label in their, without really having thought it through or having a longer term vision. So I do think you can actually work on it as if you want to call it a joint or a split business, a bipartisan type of business. In terms of Supermilk, the biggest single advantage, I think the threat or the thing that keeps me awake in the evening time would be, could someone else copy Supermilk? Now, if I go back a little bit, everyone else was copying Supermilk at one stage. They had super stuck all over their packs, and we had to stop it. What makes it's actually very complicated to make a fortified milk in terms of what you actually have to do to it from a processing point of view. And the biggest single advantage we have is that we do more for milk, and we do more with milk, and we have more innovation resource behind it than anyone else. And it gives us certain, as we know, is a long lead time before anyone else could do it. The retailers try and do it through other manufacturers. They can't do the same product delivery as we do. They can't give the same range or pack functionality, and we believe that actually makes a difference. But we are, one of the charts said that we are constantly into brand ID development, and we're constantly tweaking, adding. There's no static in Supermilk at all. It's constantly amended and challenged on an ongoing basis, because we couldn't sit on any kind of our laurels.
Thanks, Colin. Would you consider that, Aisling? Would you consider a private label?
We have chosen, instead of looking at private label, our sales are predominantly branded, but we look at alternative channels.
Yeah.
So, as a premium producer in a very finite market, which is Ireland, to grow and develop long term, we have to think laterally about how we managed our business. So the first thing we did was set up the cafes, which gave us our own retail network, which was a really valuable thing. And in terms of they're a standalone business in their own right, but they're also a phenomenal advertising and marketing vehicle for us. Internationally, we've developed franchises, which have also given us another channel. So it's really thinking differently about our product mix, having different products for different channels. So for example, something in a supermarket might be something that's very different from what we sell, say, in an airport in Sydney, or might be very different from something in our cafes. We've been very focused on NPD, has been one of the big drivers, and it's NPD always of our brand. We're always thinking about butlers and what we can best do to help grow those sales. So for example, when we're creating a product for the Middle East, for example, we never assume anybody knows us. So we're always looking at it from the eyes of a consumer who's completely ignorant about us, about Ireland. And we're on a shelf maybe in between Godiva and Lindt, so our packaging is our salesperson. So we're always thinking about the product obviously, but the product will get you the second sale. And we really think the packaging is going to draw people in the first instance. So it's really thinking about how we can sell in different channels and that they can all coexist. So for example, in Asia, we would be looking at deluxe packaging. In America, it might be about Irish cream truffle. So it's having different products for different markets, and that's helped us drive our branded business as opposed to going down the private label route in Ireland.
Thanks, Aisling. There's two questions here. Sorry. Two in the front. Yeah. Man in the shirt there, yeah.
Hi there, Adrian Young. I'm with Kerry Foods. Thanks both for your presentations. I have a question for Cassandra on the creative side of things, where you were saying with your example that you ended up having one of your own staff come up with an idea, and you used her idea instead, having tendered out the idea to different agencies. Is that something that you've done more since, where you look in-house instead of trying to use agencies, or are you still going to agencies all the time for that? And like you said, creativity is one of your pillars, so how are you using that to maybe keep things more in-house and come up with your own ideas?
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't tender the campaign just because I'm very kind of conscious that a lot of brands do that as a bit of a fishing exercise. So it was more a case of we were being approached by some of the big agencies wanting to work with us. Just to make that really clear, just because I kind of have sort of ethical sort of problems with that. But as we grow, I guess we have our in-house design and creative team, and so very rarely is any of that creativity outsourced. I think when we do work with external partners, it's because there's an amazing set designer or an amazing photographer that we want to collaborate with. I haven't got anything at all against agencies. Myself, I was at BBH, which is an ad agency, for a couple of years before I quit. It's just that there's so much passion and enthusiasm within our four walls, and we move so quickly that even by the time we've briefed something, we've already sort of taken a few more steps internally. So there's always that sense of detachment, and it's through no fault of their own. So I think it kind of works for us, the way that we operate as a business, that we keep that sort of creativity in-house, and then where appropriate, work with real experts in their field. So yeah.
Okay. If I could just add there, we've an example of not using agencies, but actually using in-house people as well with our brand Muju, which is a flavoured chocolate and chocolate mint flavoured product with a bit of strawberry in one of the flavours. It's effectively more than doubled over the last year, and we use no external agency work. We've no external media on it at all. It's all social media, largely driven by our own team or by followers who actually create their own content and pass it around. We ask them to come up with new ideas. We ask them to give us pictures of what the product might look like. We ask them for feedback. We make changes that we tell them. We've tens of thousands of followers on the brand, and we allow them to do a lot of our agency type of work for us, and it's effectively free. There's no.
Okay, that's quite enough of that now. Will you stick up for agencies, John? Please tell us about your work with agencies.
Well, I guess I guess one of the first jobs that I had to do when I joined Flavins back around 1996 was to put the agency brief for advertising out to pitch. And the incumbent agency had actually been working 30 years in the business, and I had the unfortunate experience of explaining to them that they'd lost the business. But we have been working with Irish International, our advertising agency, since then, since 1995, and we place a great deal of trust and value in that relationship. And I suppose what I would say is I think there's a real benefit to having good, strong, long-term relationships with agencies where, as long as they're generating the creative that you want them to, you measure them hard, you research their work, you make sure it's doing what you want them to do. But I do think that there, on the balancing side, there is a great advantage sometimes to having people who really know your brand inside out, so that when you go to them with a new challenge, they can pick it up really quickly.
Thanks, John. I can only take one more question. I don't know who. Yeah, there's one there. Yeah.
John Keogh, I'm with the steering group of the Brand Forum. Thank you to the presenters for 2 excellent presentations. I spent some time in the snack food business during my career, so I have the utmost respect for what Cassandra has achieved in the short period of 5 years. As a former colleague of Colin's, I'm precluded from asking questions, as you'll note from his presentation, but my question is for John Noonan. John, we've seen what Avonmore have done with through Colin's presentation, taking a must-stock commodity and turning it into a valued brand. Could you, from your role in Flavins, tell us how you're doing similar stretching of the Flavins brand from the basic commodity of oatmeal?
Okay. Thanks, John. Well, I think there's two parts I'd look at. I would talk about maybe some of the work we've done within our core business, and then some of the work we've done into adjacent categories, and often trying to work out the balance between which of those to do creates a lot of tension actually in a business, because particularly around adjacent categories, it's new to you. It may look like a great opportunity, but often it can be the start of something terrible as well. So you just have to be a little bit careful. So if I maybe the starting point again for most of them, for us anyway, has been really trying to understand that target consumer, knowing them as well as we can, and then knowing what they're looking for and what's possible, and then being realistic about the capabilities of our company to deliver that. And so if I give 2 maybe different examples, we would have wanted to attend, I suppose, to the needs of younger users around porridge, but we would have recognized that the preparation as it was at that time wasn't suitable for them, so we wanted to launch into convenience porridge. And so we did that, launching into new varieties and new formats around drums, around pots, around sachets. And we were very pleased with that because even though it's a stretch and an innovation in the category, it had the benefit of strengthening our core position within hot cereals. So that was very close to our core. It did require us to invest in significant new machinery because all the formats were different from what we were producing at the time, which was bags. But our measure on it is that it worked really well and it had the benefit of strengthening our core business. A move into kind of an adjacent space then would be that we might have looked at different categories where the brand could travel to. And that might be snacks and it could be biscuits, but it might also be like cereals. And we looked more closely at that area, and then we zoned in on the area of muesli. And we wondered whether or not actually we could launch a Flavins muesli. And then we thought about, a no added sugar muesli and having an oat base rather than a wheat base. And then it began to make sense that, that the capabilities that we had in-house could actually be turned to provide a proposition in muesli. And so we launched Flavins High 8 No Added Sugar Muesli, which is probably still the best-selling single SKU, branded SKU within muesli in Tesco. And again, we're very happy for that. Because, again, we were able to use our existing capabilities. It had the effect of strengthening our core business. People who were consuming porridge were switching over to muesli during the summer months. So again, it made some sense for us there. So I guess some of the kind of watchouts I think really are if you're moving into a space away from the category that you're in, you really have to know your consumer, spend time really trying to work that out. I think you have to ask yourself, is it as big an opportunity as you think it is, and is there a profit pool there that you can exploit? And perhaps you have to ask yourself as well, what will the competition do when you get in there? You know, because if there's an incumbent in there and they're going to defend their space, then you have to be ready for that as well.
Thanks, John. And there's a very good reason why I can't take any more questions, and I know some people probably...